studio, is it?
Yeah, it's like my home studio. So I got a
Wow.
nice studio. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to get you to play as well then. We're good to go?
Yeah.
Right. Great. Mr. Clint, it's an absolute pleasure.
Uh,
Long time coming, but we finally made it. I have been very excited. But before I jump into a whole heap of things that I want to talk about and get your perspectives on, I didn't know you had a Labrador. I figured just yesterday.
oh, really? That's,
How is
yeah.
this possible? I mean, with all our phone calls so far, we haven't spoken about dogs. I can't
Are
believe this.
you a dog lover?
I have a Labrador at home too. His name is Happy.
That's awesome. Yeah, my guy's name is Boomer. He's a
Yeah,
big lab.
amazing.
He's a darling. Yeah, you'll hear him bark at some point. He has
Amazing.
an apple at night before he goes to sleep, so he wants his apple.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but I mean, he's full of it. Anyway,
Right.
yeah, he's a darling. I mean, how many labs do you have?
I only have one, and he keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, it's a big commitment,
It is.
a lot of time, and they need love like babies,
Yeah.
and it's super important. So especially when you're traveling, I'm assuming it's tricky.
Yeah. I
How old,
hired a pet
how old
sitter
is your
here.
dog? How
Hmm?
old is your dog?
He
How
turned
old is
five
he?
this year. He's five.
Yeah, mine is 4.
Okay. Nice. We
Mhm.
should probably get these guys to do a FaceTime call sometime soon.
Yeah, eat some cake.
Awesome. Great. And this is definitely going to be a topic for our next phone call. And Mr. Clint, super excited to have you on the podcast. And then I would firstly like to thank AR sir for introducing us. And then since then we've been connected, and then we exchanged some amazing energies, and then I've had a blast in all the phone calls and all the conversations that we have had. And I've always had you on my list, even before we met, to be honest. So the thing is, I mean, Annette was on my podcast as well, about almost a year and a half ago now. And she did mention that I have to have you on the podcast. And you were on my list since then. And, but it was AR sir who introduced us. And then so thankful to him. And also thankful to you for connecting, and also the amazing friendship and the beautiful conversations that we have and the energies we exchange. So looking forward to this podcast, and I'm sure there's going to be more. And I can't wait to meet you in person. So thank you
My
for coming.
pleasure as well. My pleasure. You bring great energy, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. And you have an amazing title, Senior Director of Berklee College of Music. That's such a huge responsibility. And before I ask you about what happens in the day of your life at Berkeley, would you like to throw some light on where the passion for music actually started, and how did it all begin?
Well, I grew up in Bombay, which is
Oh,
now Mumbai, and it was I was just with a friend of mine who was over from Bombay, and he's a phenomenal doctor,
mm,
and we've been doing a lot of music and meditation with breath work,
wow.
and he and I were talking about the energy of Bombay and the vibe that it creates, and the only city that comes close is New York.
Right.
And when we were growing up, this was in the 90s, so I'm dating myself. You know, I was playing in church with various friends and colleagues, and we were driving the priest crazy because we used to play all these hymns that, were kind of boring to some degree, and we'd like rock them and use drum machines and 2 keyboards, and so all of that started a long time ago. And at that time, you had to have good ears to listen to the music because there was no sheet music available easily.
Mm,
But we were influenced so much by Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and Prince and Sting and all these great artists.
mm,
And so um, I think at the age of, I started learning piano at 5.
Wow.
and 5 or 6 years old, around there. And then by the time I was 14, I was playing with a band professionally.
Mm.
And then, playing at the Farias and all the hotels in Bombay, the Taj and the Oberoi Hotel. And I even traveled to other parts of India to perform.
Wow.
But, I had that kind of fire in my belly to want to work with some of the artists from my childhood who had influenced me so much, and wanted to try and find an opportunity to create that access point, not only for myself, but for others as well.
Mm.
And so it started there, and my parents were very supportive because, whenever anyone came over to our house, they would first talk to my brother and say, "Son, what do you do?" And he'd be like, "I'm an IT engineer." And they would be like, "Oh my God, what a nice boy." And then when they met me, they'd say, "What do you do, son?" And I'd be like, "I'm a musician." They, in their mind, they think, loser, total loser. You know, we don't want our daughter to marry this guy. Um, and so, I was a little crazy. When the aunties would show up again, the next time I got a little smart. When they'd ask my brother, "What do you do?" He was an IT engineer. They'd be like, "Oh my God, what a great boy again." And then they asked me, "What do you do?" I'd say, "Auntie, I'm exploring the ship." And at that time, shippies in India, to be a captain of a ship was a big deal. So a lot of these Catholic aunties would want their daughters to marry somebody who's on the ship because they were earning in dollars. So they thought, this guy's on the ship. So they'd be like, "Oh, that's so lovely." And then they'd meet me 6 or 9 months later and see I'm still around. And it'd be like, "Your ship never sailed, son. What happened?" And then I'd say, "No, auntie, I'm exploring entrepreneurship." And, these aunties would just laugh at me and say, "This guy is a total moron." So, at that time, I was just all about the music and nothing else distracted me. And it helped my focus to just stay on that path. I went to St. Xavier's College, and
Mm.
that's where I decided to apply to Berklee College of Music.
Right.
It was a very, very different time. You had to send in a tape and
Yeah.
receive the application, and it took 3 months to send it back, and yada yada yada.
Hmm.
Finally, I got in, I got a scholarship, and then off to America. And my parents were very supportive.
Beautiful.
My parents were the kind of rock and foundation that gave us that opportunity. And so I came to America in 1995 to go to
Wow.
Berkeley. And that's where it began. Yeah.
Beautiful. And from then until now, when you look back, how do you feel about it?
Well, you know, I think to myself sometimes that if I remained in India,
Mm.
who knows what could have happened. Um, but I feel that, let's say I was an IT engineer or I did something else, so I was a marketing person or
Mm.
whatever I was. I don't think I would have had the access point to the kind of people I have met um, in this time and over the years. You know, the incredible creative people I've met, and industrialists and
Mm.
people in business, doctors, lawyers, etc. And music has been that kind of, glue that has not only introduced me to them, but also helped me stick around because I had something of value to them.
Mm.
I think a lot of people either want to be musicians or would love to be able to showcase their talent through music or dance or some creative art. But they don't get the opportunity to because either their parents don't allow them to, or, they believe they've got to earn a living a different way. And some of them don't are never introduced to the fact that music can be a career.
Mm.
So I think I was lucky and I'm living, my love for what I do. And I just, try and learn every day. And, I'm a student of everything, not only art, but everything else.
So beautiful. And and also, I mean, shaping up the careers of hundreds and hundreds of students, or even thousands, I don't know the exact count, making their careers and building their aspirations, and it must be such a great feeling, right? I mean, being the director of one of the prestigious music colleges in the world and seeing
You know,
students.
yeah, it's a responsibility, but also it's very important for all of us to do it at any level because
Yeah.
you don't know who the next, genius is going to be.
Mm,
If somebody did not give AR that opportunity,
mm,
he wouldn't be able to influence so many other people that he has.
true.
And I mean, talking about somebody who really creates access points for people, AR has done it. Um, say A.R.Rahman, because he uh, very early, identifies young people, whether it's on Instagram. I see him all the time on Instagram. He's always going through Instagram and checking out these young people, and he'll fly them from wherever they are and bring them over. And the next thing you know, they're either in his band or his orchestra or in a movie, and then their lives take off. And he's got that magic touch. And somebody who did it a lot before him was Miles Davis.
Mm,
Miles Davis, jazz musician, who had many young musicians in his bands,
mm,
and all of them went on to have huge successful careers.
wow.
And Hayward has done that with
Mm,
many young people. So, I mean, we learn from the best.
beautiful. Love it. And what's the vision for Berkeley College?
Well, Berklee is going through a transition. I
Mm,
think at this time, there's been a lot of expansion. There's so many different ensembles. There's a platform for musicians from a global environment to be able to collaborate, create, and I think work together and build communities.
mm,
And that is so important to come to a place where you're able to work with like-minded people
mm,
that you may be from a small town somewhere, maybe in Nepal or
mm,
Bombay, or somewhere in America, and you don't have an access point to folks that you can play with, or friends that you can collaborate with, or an innovative lab where you're creating sounds or sound design, or you're creating sounds for Tesla.
mm,
Uh, and you come to a place like Berkeley where there are other people like you, or there's MIT, which is close by, and you can go and collaborate with some of those, tech geniuses there, or Harvard, where there's a business school where you could get some great advice on, or form some kind of incubator where,
mm.
a startup can flourish. So that's all happening in Boston. It's a great city for that.
Nice.
Uh, so I think the vision is to it's constantly transforming,
Mm,
and Berkeley's in search of a new president, and when that happens, I mean, they'll lay the foundation of what the vision is for the global strategy of the college.
mm,
But I mean, the values don't change, of creating access for young people and being the preeminent school of music in the world
mm,
and dance. And I think also, when we were growing up, it was very difficult to access people or collaborate. But now you can do it through various platforms,
mm,
and that makes life much easier. But also with AI, you got to be able to embrace it
mm.
and look at what, people were worried about CDs at one point, but technology continues to change. And the earlier you embrace it, the more relevant you're going to be.
So amazing. Yeah.
I think Berkeley creates those from, a place of technology
Mm,
to the music business, to education, online learning, performance, dance, theater. It's an ecosystem by itself, and it has a location in New York, Valencia, Spain, and Abu Dhabi,
wow.
besides Boston. So there's a lot of cross collaboration that can happen.
Right. Any plans of bringing it to Australia? Selfishly asking.
Yeah, I think there have been some great Australian musicians that have come to Berkeley, and they go
Mm,
back
mm,
to their hometown and or their city
Yeah.
and many of them are teaching there possibly. But I think it's very difficult for a college to keep expanding
True.
because real estate costs money. Having you have to have somebody funding it, right?
Mm.
The but anything is possible. It just depends on the timing and
Mm.
circumstances and who's supporting the initiative. So,
Agree.
uh, I don't know the answer, but
I
yeah.
hope it does one day. And let's put it out in the universe and hopefully it manifests. And we will do an in-person podcast when that happens here. And
Well,
and and earlier in the conversation you mentioned about meditation, and I can't resist asking about this. So do you want to throw some light on meditation? Like, I mean, for me personally, for me music is very meditative. I get into a meditative zone. I have a certain playlist that I get into, predominantly AR's songs, and it takes me into a certain zone. And then, at, as much as I try to focus to sit in one place and try to focus on something and try to meditate, 9 out of 10 times it doesn't really work that way for me. But for me, it's more meditative when I'm having the music on, but I'm focusing on something and my passion lies there. For example, podcast journey or everything else that I do, I, that's more meditative for me. But I'd like to get your perspective on meditation, and also the fact that you're into music too. So what's the interlink, and do you still meditate?
yeah, I think I'm around people who do it much better than I do. And some of these folks have been studying with gurus, for years.
Mm,
The doctor I work with, who I've
mm,
partnered with, Amit Anand, he's worked with a guru who's 91 years old and still teaching. But
wow.
it's more breath work,
Mm,
and the breath work is work.
mm,
So it's not just sitting down and, going in a zone, but it's actually breathing to help your body and your lung capacity, reducing your heart rate and your blood pressure and such. But
mm,
it's like the peloton of music, So breath work is hard. For example, if you're going to run and jog, it's work. You got to do that. But when you have music to guide you, where it's kind of like a metronome
mm,
with music being the guide, and the faster the music, sometimes you work harder, sometimes you slow yourself down. And so what we're doing is we're taking uh certain tones that calm you and relax you, and not just because typically if you look at you Google meditative music, you're going to get some Indian music with a
mm,
flute player or a santoor player or something like that.
mm,
But this is very customized to how young people today, they didn't grow up with that, right?
mm,
Not all over the world. And if we're creating a space for people to do this meditative work with
mm,
breath, then they need to have music that resonates with them. So it started with, I went back to my days in church and thinking of, oh man, and things of that nature, but not, it doesn't have to be about our men. It's more about spirituality. So, Mullah, all those lines that even AR has sung,
mm,
so beautiful. It's
mm,
so beautiful. It takes you on a journey somewhere spiritually.
mm,
So it could be anything, or it could be, something from the Vedas or shlokas. I've got some people singing all the shlokas
mm,
and then putting like certain pads of voicings around it to emote that feeling of whatever you're feeling. So you have options.
mm.
Whatever resonates with you, it takes you to that spiritual place. So we're trying to really get this recipe right. And it's a work in progress. But we're really working towards the therapeutic side of how healing happens. And we've got a music therapist who's a trained music therapist working with us, because I'm not a music therapist. I just
Mm,
feel and know what I feel.
mm,
But this person's a trained music therapist with neurology and music therapy. And then we've got somebody who's a tech guru who's helping us with all the tech stuff.
mm.
So this is a work in progress, but it's really exciting.
Wow.
because the music is supporting the breath.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Amazing.
And
Yeah, keep
you
going.
know, no, I think it's really special because it doesn't have to be about religion. It's more about, what you feel. And you don't have to, but when you go to a special place, as you were saying in the zone, that zone could be anything, right? But what takes you to that zone? So, so I mean, you listen to Nanyen and all these songs, and you're like, where the heck did AR get that from? Where did that come from? You know, such beautiful songs.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Ye Jo Des, what a song, dude. Like, I ask him, tell us where you get those, but
And what did he have to
it's
say?
no, it comes to him because it's somebody's, you know, um, sharing those, whoever it is, I don't know, but it's coming from a very spiritual place. And I remember I heard this quote that Michael Jackson would say that, I need to be awake all the time because uh when God gives me those special songs, if I'm not awake, he's going to give it to Prince or somebody else. So I better be awake, you know.
Wow. So
So,
deep.
I mean, AR has mentioned that those special, moments come when he's gifted with those special songs and they just flow. And
Love it.
so, you know, um, that's why he's the genius he is.
Love it. And that's a perfect segue into getting into the ARR world and meeting ARR for the first time ever, first ever interaction. How did you get to meet him? And I take it you were always his fan, or you turned into his fan after meeting him. What's the story there too?
No, I honestly didn't know too much about. I knew he did great music.
Right.
Because like, when I was living in India, I'd hear about this guy from
Mm.
Chennai, and I
Mm.
was talking to a gentleman named Ronnie Montserrat. And Ronnie Montserrat was a very, I think, in the early years of Artie Berman and Bapi Lahiri, he was their keyboard player. He did all of the scores for a lot of big films at that time. And so I grew up knowing Ronnie very well. He would be at my house very often. And just last week, I was speaking with him, and he told me a story which, it'd be nice to share here, I guess.
Please do.
Uh, and I asked him for his permission to share, and he said, absolutely. But he was telling me that because in the early years when AR was doing jingles, he was doing all these great jingles, and nobody could understand where the sound came from. Suddenly, this guy from Chennai's got like this really forward thinking mindset and sound that nobody was creating.
Mm.
And he had the, I think he was so daring to go for it. He believed in the music he was creating.
Yeah.
So, I think that was from an early time. So apparently, Audie Berman, they were in the studio in Bombay, and I think AR was in Studio B, and they were in Studio A, and Audie Berman comes to Ronnie and says, "Hey, I got this cassette from this guy. I want you to hear it. Tell
Mm.
me what you think." And he listens to it, and Ronnie says, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable. I've never heard anything like this." And um, and then R.D. Berman says to Ronnie, "This guy is going to be the biggest thing you ever heard."
Wow.
And and the rest is history. And he told me the story last week, and I would never have known that. But
Amazing.
I've heard of other stories like, you know, who he is and how the talent that he puts you to the test, and that we could talk about. It's really interesting how he brings you in to his world, and then you got to prove it, or you got the opportunity to, live up to the challenge. And I've seen it happen with a few people, and either they do it or they don't come back.
Mm. Could you go a bit more deeper into that test phase?
Well, I don't know if you know of my friend Clinton Sareo. Clinton Sareo is a phenomenal musician
Oh
artist. We
yeah,
grew
of
up.
course. Yes, he's been
Yeah.
on the podcast. Yeah, sorry, Misheard his last name. Yes, of course, he's a very good buddy of mine. Yeah,
Yes, Clinton and I grew up in church together, and we've known
I
each
didn't
other.
know. Wow.
Yeah, in school together.
Fun
Uh,
fact is, Clinton and I have been friends for quite a long time. That's much, much before the ARR number plate and all sorts of things happened. So we've known each other for quite a while, and he's actually seen me go through this fitness transformation from being a 110 kilo guy to losing 45 kilos and whatnot. And he connected with me. Yeah, that's it. He connected with me, and somehow he must have run into my Facebook post or something like that. So we've known each other for quite a while. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
so Clinton and I grew up together, and we've been like brothers, for the longest time. And he
Lovely.
was the first one that, I decided to bring here when we initially started, bringing artists here. And Clinton told me the story a while ago, which was that he was called by somebody for a studio recording,
Mm,
and in one of the studios in Bombay. This is way after I'd left India,
mm,
and he um, he showed up to the studio early, which is unlike Clinton. Clinton was always late for everything, at least as long as we've known him. So he shows up early, and he goes there. And it was actually a recording, but he was called as a vocalist for this recording, I believe,
yeah.
or to arrange the music or something like that.
Mm,
And but no, let me actually. There's a little information before that, which was actually AR was in the studio
right.
in Bombay, and the studio had Studio A and Studio B, and AR was in Studio A.
Yeah.
And Clinton had just done a recording for Studio B, a vocal arrangement or something like that.
Mm,
And the door happened to be ajar. And AR happened to hear what they were playing in the other studio. So he walks in there in Studio B and says to the engineer, "Who did this?"
mm,
And the producer there said, "I did it," as in like he lied that he did it, which was not the truth.
right.
So he took credit for that vocal arrangement. So he
Right.
tells AR that I did it. Well, AR, listen, was like great stuff, and he leaves. Well, the engineer called Clinton and told him, "Look, Mr. A.R.Rahman was here, and we were playing the track you just did the vocal arrangement for, and Mr. A.R. loved the track, but the producer told him that was his work."
Right.
Now, Clinton didn't know AR. He didn't know a way of contacting him. And this was when Roja, I think, had just happened, or,
Right.
so he was on the uptick at that time.
Mm,
So Clinton was called a month later for a recording session. Now, God had it this way.
mm,
And Clinton didn't know who the session was for, but he happened to go early, and it was for A.R.Rahman. So he happened to be there, and he tells AR, Mr. Rahman, I don't know if you know, but you were in so and so studio a month ago, and the engineer played you a track, and the producer actually you liked it, and the producer said, you asked who did the vocal arrangement, and the producer said that he did it. It's actually not true. It's me. I did it.
right.
So AR says to him, "Really? Okay." So he says, and AR's got that smirk. He said, "Okay, here's the track we're doing for this session. Why don't you arrange it?" So Clinton's like, "Oh my God, like I opened my mouth at the wrong time. And what am I going to do?" And so AR left him with the track
Mm,
and gave him some idea of what he was looking for. And Clinton just sat and arranged and arranged and arranged and got it down. And he was with the engineer, a new engineer who he is working with, AR's engineer. And then
yeah.
he said, "Hey, can you call Mr. Rahman to come and listen to what I've done?" AR had already left, and he's gone to Chennai.
Oh,
He's left. So Clinton was like, "Oh my God." Anyway, AR sends a message that he loved the track. He wanted him to come to Chennai
right.
for about 3 or 4 days or something like that to work on some more stuff.
Yeah.
So Clinton goes there, and he had barely any clothes. He went with 3 days of clothes. He
Yeah.
happened to stay there for like, I believe, 12 days or something like that. So he had to buy some clothes there and all. But that's how you asked me the question about putting someone to the test. That's what happened. And then he worked with him for many, many years, and did a killer job. So, you know, life comes full circle.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm answering all your questions. You're asking me
Absolutely.
questions.
Yeah, no, no, it's great. I love hearing stories like this, and then going back to meeting ARR for the first time ever, and how did it happen? And was it during when he visited Berkeley, is it, or much before that?
Yeah, so I remember I told AR this much later. I
Hmm.
was, I was hearing about this guy and Macabre and all this cool
Hmm.
stuff that he did, and I was like, I gotta work with this dude. I gotta find a way to work with him. So I remember he had a website with all clouds in it and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
So I wrote to that website, info at, I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
ARRahman.com or something like that. I tried to look for that email. I couldn't find it. I think maybe there was a kind of, a little area where you could fill out your information and write a little note. And I said, I'm
Correct.
Clint Valladares or whatever. I don't know what I said. I'd love to work with you at some point. Well, I never got a response. And I told him, I said, I never got a response from you. How terrible of you. And, I said, can you look up? He didn't have that website anymore. This was many years later. But no, I met him in 2014. And that was the first time I met him. I'd never interacted with him.
Hmm.
I knew some of his music. I knew he was good. But, I was so focused on Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson and, David Foster and, all of these artists that I'd kind of left India a little behind, for a while. And, you know, I guess I was just trying to find my own way at that point.
Hmm.
So when I met him and understood who the man is and what his music's about, that changed the way I felt about just the music, and getting to know him as a person was, very special, because he's not just a phenomenal musician, but and I have great respect for his music, but also a great teacher and an individual who
Hmm.
does so much for people that a lot of communities or individual folks don't know about.
Hmm.
So that's what I respect more. The Sunshine Orchestra, him putting these kids on the map, that's phenomenal work.
Agree.
And that takes more than just being kind. That takes perseverance, diligence, taking risk, putting
Hmm.
your own money where your mouth is.
True.
Lots of people talk about, I'll do this, I'll do that, when but he's actually doing it.
Hmm.
See the young people coming out of KM Conservatory, or anybody who's been in the studio with him, where you come away, I don't care what song you're singing, but you come away feeling like you learned something that day.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest gift, I think.
Hmm.
I mean, look
Beautiful.
at anybody you talk to, from Shreya Ghoshal to Vijay Prakash, or Hariharan, or Shankar Mahadevan, or anybody. Forget the uh, you know international artists. I'm just talking about our homegrown, local, phenomenal,
Yeah.
global artists from India, and all of them will tell you the same story, that just working with the man is very special.
True. Very true. And how did your friendship evolve with him? So I know for the fact that it usually takes time, especially with him, and that's probably how long he takes to invite and include someone in his world. And then once you're in, and it just evolves and blossoms. And it's just all about love. And then, but he's a different person altogether when he's amongst his friends. What do you want to shed some light there?
Well, I think I have to give credit to Kevin Doucette. Kevin is a dear friend of mine, and Kevin and I met in 2011,
Yeah.
and we were both Berklee alums. And Kevin at that time had, come off the Jaiho tour.
Mm.
And so we met in San Francisco at a Berklee alumni event, and he says to me, we were talking about what do you do? What do I do? Oh, we're keyboard players, this, that, the other. And then it was like, he was like, oh, are you from India? I said, yeah. I mean, I know I look Irish, but not. So he said, well, I just came off the tour with Mr. A.R.Rahman. I was like, A.R.Rahman, what are you doing with A.R.Rahman? And so he, was handling all of his technology and studio and working with him very closely. And then we both talked about bringing AR to Berklee
Mm.
to receive an honorary doctorate. And we said, let's work on it. And it might take some time, but let's do it.
Yeah.
So so that's what we set out to do. And that's how the 2014 honorary doctorate happened. Kevin and I were really interested in making that happen. And when we got the opportunity with the president of Berklee, who was Mr. Roger Brown, another phenomenal person who's, been very instrumental in some of the things that I've been able to do as well. He believed, and he loves AR as well, and that's how that synergy happened. And
Mm.
we finally got AR to Berklee.
Beautiful. And then how did your friendship evolve with him after you've known him and then
I think sometimes it's like, you start going to the same restaurants all the time and you meet the same people all the time. And I think it evolved around a mutual respect for what he does and what I do. And
nice.
uh, I think we started trying to work on a song that we thought we should work on for a project.
Mm.
And then, slowly you get to know each other, and maybe, I learned more about AR as a person, and he learned more about maybe my skill set and what I
Mm.
was doing or what I was into. And we started, I think, bumping into each other at for various reasons.
Mm.
First we tried to give 3 students an AR scholarship,
Oh.
and that happened.
Mm.
Then there were various circumstances that brought us together, and then having a Kevin was still working with AR very closely, and Kevin's a dear friend, and so invariably, they'd pull me in for something or the other.
Mm.
Um, and I always in my heart felt that AR was already on his way, but he could do so much more.
Mm.
And the world is his oyster. But with every artist, you go through phases in your life, and he's searching all the time.
Mm.
And that's the genius of him. He's a learner. He's continues to learn. So he was always curious or inquisitive about various things that were happening. He talked to me about KM and the schools, and we've been in situations where you have to go shopping with AR for musical gear. It's another experience. That's another podcast.
Oh
But
no,
that was
please do talk about it. That was actually going to be one of the things I was going to ask you to. So,
that was fun. So I mean, yeah, he it's like a kid in a candy store. AR loves technology. And so either you're chasing him or you're finding out more about what technology he's into. And so that kept me inquisitive as well, as to like, how does this guy keep up with a family, with beautiful kids, that he has such a beautiful relationship, his lovely, lovely wife, and he's such a humble man. And the most biggest kudos I have to give AR, honestly, is the respect that he has for everyone who walks into his studio.
mm.
Um, he just treats people with respect, and
Okay.
they feel the respect. They also feel so safe in his place to record, to be there, to share their music and their art. And these are things, these are values that I think come from his mom and maybe his dad. Uh, these are in his genes, and so um, I think those things really resonate with me.
Yeah. Beautiful. And
Uh,
he pretty much meets you with his every visit to the US, isn't it? That's what I think because I see you in almost every pick of his, as in, or even the events like Grammys, Oscars, and even the lamest launch.
Look, I am a little small piece among many, many pieces of his big puzzle. And AR, one good thing about him is that he makes time for everybody.
Correct.
I don't know how he does it.
True.
I thought, I told him, I said, AR, look, I believe you're definitely timing your emails, like you're auto sending them. you know, like you'll get emails at all odd hours, but it's him. So maybe there's two of him or three of him. I don't know. But he's that kind of person then, and I think that's the genius of who he is. I mean, he makes time for everybody, and I don't know how he has time to have time for his family, which he has time for and he makes time for. And I've learned so much about that. His family comes first, and you never leave without a meal, which is like, what a generous person in many ways.
Agree.
So uh
Hmm.
uh I feel like I meet him all the time, but maybe maybe there are many times I've never met him.
What do you guys talk about when you catch up? I'm sure it's like uh
With AR, there's not a lot to say. With
yeah,
AR, you can learn so much by just observing. And sometimes, you know, I think we all have to learn to just shut up and listen,
mm,
which I'm trying to do more of now. I'm getting older and wiser. But hanging around with AR, you learn a lot of that. Um,
right.
Sometimes there's so much to share, but everybody's not ready for that. And I think it's like music when playing in a concert hall, right? It's not about the notes that you choose to play,
Mm,
but people are paying for the notes that you choose not to play.
wow.
And so I think that's so important. And silence in music is something that, eh, actually costs more money. You see a lot of kids who come out of schools, they want to play every note they know, but people who are older and have more experience actually
Mm,
do not overproduce. So
yeah.
I think this is something that I'm trying to practice with my own life with the words maybe I choose to say and not say. So it's a learning experience.
True.
I'm humble about that. I have to learn.
True. And I know for the fact that when he is in India or in Chennai, more specifically, he misses out on going out for walks and going to the stores or just doing things as like a normal person, which obviously he'll get mobbed if he does it in India. And then I know for the fact that he loves doing it while stays in the US or abroad. Any memories of just going for a walk with him? I know he likes little pleasures like that, going for little walks, just going to even grab a coffee, a black coffee or whatever that is. And anything that rings a bell or anything that you.
Yeah, we've gone to breakfast a bunch of times and gone for coffee. And we went to, what was it? I think we went for a COVID test together.
Okay.
And, it was funny because those folks didn't know who he was. And, it's just a trip. It's just nice to see him just relaxed
Mm,
and not have to worry about, uh,
anything.
I mean, I've taken him to a black gospel church.
Oh yeah.
It was a experience by itself, and I think his children were with him, Khatija, Rahima, and I
Mm,
don't know if Amin came. Amin didn't wake up, maybe. I
mm,
don't remember.
mm.
And we went to this Black Gospel church because he asked me, where are you going? What are you doing this weekend? And I said, oh, I'm going to take, someone, I think it was my brother. I'm going to take my brother to this Black Gospel church. And I don't know if you've been to a Black Gospel church. It's phenomenal. It's an
Right. I haven't.
experience you must have. So his curiosity kicked in and he's like, hey, I want to come. And I'm like, oh my God, now taking AR to a Black Gospel church, like, I have to make some arrangements here. Anyway, we went and and we reached there, and we go park and then we have to walk on the street, and this is like a pretty sketchy neighborhood. So we're walking on the street, we get to the church, all those folks are like, welcome, welcome, and they go to give him a hug. And he's not used to that. And he had a cap on. They told him, you need to take that cap off. And it was early in the morning. It was like a Sunday early in the morning, but the music was killing. It was unbelievable.
Mm.
And Khadija was there, and she had hijab on, and Rahima, and they were enjoying the music. It was fantastic. I think AR won't forget that experience, and I think he had a great time. In fact, he always talks about it sometimes.
Beautiful. Love it. And his sense of humor. Any of those witty comments or anything that still stands out for you that you would like to share?
Oh, he always says, things like totally, because when he comes here, everyone's like, yeah, totally, we got that. Don't worry, totally. So he'll be like going on about totally. I mean, he's a funny dude, especially when you're in an environment where, look, I mean, I understand that sometimes, it's very difficult to be um, a star, especially in a country like India. You just don't get time to just look at the sun and enjoy just the moment. Be
Mm.
yourself. So I think he cherishes those moments, and you know, so you're not on camera all the time and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Who needs that?
Right. Yeah. And when you go out for breakfast with him, not that I'm going very deep into this, what does he usually order? Like scrambled eggs and stuff, or what does he eat?
I think it's just a wholesome meal.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's you know, it's a very wholesome meal. I've had breakfast at his house too.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, look, yeah, he's a normal person just
Normal
like you and
person
me.
only. Yeah.
And I think that gets lost in in translation when, he's just a good human being
Mm.
trying to live like all of us, you know. And he has the same worries about his family and his children and his, close loved ones, like
Mm.
we all do.
Mm.
So you sometimes need that time to just be who you are.
True. Right. And he meditates too, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, look at the man has so many people and so many mouths that he feeds. And so that's a huge burden on someone.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be a star, but
Mm.
when you know that many families depend on you, you got to keep earning. You got to keep making movies.
Mm.
You got to music for movies or all movies, and you got to keep innovating. And you know, sometimes it's a lot of pressure.
True.
You want to hit, you know, it's not like, when you're playing cricket, the ball's not always on the bat. You can't take it for granted. And music is changing, the world is changing, there's AI coming in. How do you embrace all this stuff? How do you keep being relevant? That
Mm.
is the most trickiest part for any artist. How can you continue to be relevant?
True. Very true. Beautiful.
So if you're a computer engineer, you got to keep up with, the latest coding
I agree.
techniques,
I
software,
agree.
or security. Um, um, code and there are hackers all over the place. So you have to,
Agree.
if you're still working in Windows 95, oh, you might as well retire, right? So, and that's happened to people where they, don't change with time, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Um, but you see somebody at the top of his game forever, that's a legacy.
yeah,
That's sustainability. And that is a true icon.
agree. Beautiful. Right. Jumping into something that I definitely want to get your perspective on, the topic, the need of the hour, which is everything that happened with the concert recently, just over a week ago. And I completely empathize with the fans or the slash audience who could not even enter the venue. Completely understand. And at the same time, I feel that Sir AR Sir, being the person he is, he just decided to take it upon him for the whole thing. Although it's pretty evident that it was poorly organized by the organizers and they have slipped in a couple of areas. Um, I'm still trying to come to terms about everything that happened, but it is what it is. We have to accept, we have to move on, and we have to also ensure that things like this doesn't happen, and also move from an audience perspectives as well. I mean, I think we will have to have a due diligence as well, and also be more organized. Like if we are going to a concert, probably go few hours before when you are anticipating a large crowd and traffic and things like that. There's learnings for almost everyone in this, and I feel that it's sort of a wake up call to every artist as well, to be more wary, and also to ensure that aspects that they may not even thought of, to be aware of, and then to be more conscious of the fact that this needs to be taken care of, and then things like that. So what's your thoughts on this with everything that happened in the last week and a half?
I think it's very sad and it's complicated because on one end, a fan, they go through a lot to attend a concert, not only
Mm.
shelling out a lot of money, sometimes more than they can afford,
Yeah,
but also getting to a venue early, uh, whether you take a bus or you or train or you're driving there. And then, even little things like trying to go to the bathroom,
correct.
there's a huge commitment, and
Mm.
especially if you're older or younger or you have some kind of disability,
Mm.
whatever it may be. On the other end, you have, an artist like AR who's so loved and he wants to give folks the best show he can
Mm.
and accommodate as many people as he can. But he does not make those decisions on how many tickets are sold.
Mm.
He's a creative powerhouse. He comes and delivers a concert, whether there's one person in the room or 50,000 people in the room. I think that's something that the promoters, and there needs to be a better infrastructure for that in the future, where, you know, there are some checks and balances, and there are guardrails to protect people all around from this kind of situation. So, you know, because if you don't have those guardrails or infrastructure, it's like a building where you have a foundation and you have approvals for one story, and then
Mm.
somebody decides, hey, there's an opportunity here, or there are more people who want to attend, and you put two stories on it, it won't have the guardrails of the foundation to be able to take that load.
Correct.
I think, but AR is the kind of person who I know many other artists would say, hey, that's not my problem. I tried to do the right thing. I performed. I gave everyone a great concert. And some people probably never saw the difference.
Mm.
But the people who were affected, even if it was one person or three people or five people or 3,000 people or 7,000 people, I think he is trying tremendously. He's, set up an email address where people can actually write directly to him. And he's reading all of those emails, and really he's empathetic of,
Mm.
what has happened, and really, is trying to put himself in the shoes of those folks who, were unable to get in or suffered some kind of consequences for whatever happened. I don't know the details of
Mm.
what actually happened. But the most important thing is he's trying to resolve it and also learn from that experience, even though it's not something that he directly had control over.
Mm.
Uh, but I give him a lot of credit for trying to not um, brush it, or put under the rug, but really face what has happened, because ultimately it's his name that people are coming for. People are coming because they're fans of his, and he really cares about his fans. So I really, commend him. I think he's doing the right thing. I think overall, hopefully, a lot of those folks who were unable to get in will get reimbursed
Mm.
to whatever extent they can be. But I from what I hear, I think AR is trying to pay people from his own pocket when he's not the one that needs to be doing that.
True.
But that's just the person he is. I would not expect anything less from him. So I think he's going out of his way to do what he can, because he cares about people. The people from Chennai have been his foundation. They are his rock. They are his everything. So I think even more so, he cares about all of those folks. So that's just my take on it. I think it'll, hopefully the next time around it'll be much better. And these are sometimes, you can't anticipate with the rain what happened.
Yeah.
The concert got canceled, and that probably put another kind of dagger into the whole situation and amplified it even more than it should have been.
True. I agree.
But there are definitely key learnings. I think that's something, you just have to accept and say, hey, I got to learn from this, or I got to fix something,
Mm.
internally, however it is, or working with whoever the promoter is that promoted the concert, because only they sell the tickets. AR is not selling tickets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, going forward, I don't know what the strategy is or what the plan is, more from, you know, from Sir's team, having someone to be working along with these organizers, ensuring that this checklist is ticked off and overseeing things as opposed to fully delegating this to the organizers or the promoters.
I think that's why there are very structured, talent management companies that have a compliance department. And they
Mm.
have that for that reason. That, like, for example, if a promoter doesn't pay you, that can happen.
Mm.
Or, you know, there are liability issues when a stage falls down or something like that happens. And that can happen. That has happened. But having a compliance division, at least, or a person who's managing that compliance, it's somebody's job rather than everybody's job is nobody's job. There's somebody who's actually overseeing, and there might exist somebody, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that this is how it's done here, so that there are checks and balances, so that, ultimately everyone's protected, not just the artists, but the fans as well.
Mm.
Something happens, like there have been concerts where people have thrown stuff at Rihanna or her,
Yeah.
or, Harry Styles and such. How did that happen? That can happen.
Mm.
And it's not right, but it does happen. So how do you deal with those circumstances? And then, he has to get off, Harry Styles might have to get off stage. And what about all those fans who paid so much money for that ticket? So I think that would be something that, is really required. going forward. Because abroad, for the most part, there are these checks and balances, but in India, unfortunately, there's not.
Mm.
I'm not saying everywhere.
Yeah.
It happens, but it's ad hoc. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm.
But this could happen anywhere.
True.
Question is, if you have a legit company that actually sells tickets and knows what, the capacity of the space is and what, it can bear, that is one place to start, at least. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I was not there.
Yeah.
I'm sharing with you
Yeah.
what, typically would happen.
Agree. And have you had some sort of an interaction with post the concert thing?
Yeah, I think he's really caring about, everybody, and I think that's what,
Mm.
my takeaway is that he's really concerned about his fans
Yeah.
and why did this happen and how can he resolve it and what can he do.
Yeah.
And I think I think he's doing a lot of it already. Maybe behind the scenes. It's not probably in public,
Mm.
uh, but he's doing a lot. And I think, you know, he's a man who has a conscience and somebody who, he doesn't do anything that he wouldn't want done to himself.
Correct.
He's always trying to do the right thing. And I think he still continue to try to do that, even though this has nothing to do with, his organization. His role is to go on stage,
Mm.
perform, and get the best concert he can with his band. That's his role. He's not there looking at how many bouncers there are and how
Yeah,
many,
indeed.
police showed up and, who's
Mm.
managing the sound booth, and that's not his job. And
It
who's
shouldn't
selling,
be.
samosas or whatever. That's not his job.
Yeah. And
Go
it
ahead,
shouldn't be
sorry.
at all because he needs to be focusing on the creative
If,
side.
if that was his job, then he wouldn't be able to give a great concert and he wouldn't be the artist he is. You're coming to see his artistry at its best, not him checking on who the chaiwala is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
exactly right.
um, I don't think it does justice to anybody if he were to do all that. And he can't.
Yeah.
That's not what he does well.
Yeah. Great.
Who am
Um,
I to say that?
yeah, for sure. Um, but just over an hour in this podcast, and I was just wondering, I mean, is there any topic under the sun that you want to talk about that I may not have touched on and you would like to talk about? I don't want you to go away thinking, oh, I wish I could have spoken about this. Is there anything? Can be part of the ARR world or outside the ARR world, can be anything under the sun that you want to talk about.
No, I think one thing that always comes to mind is, the one thing that AR has done, he's put the sound of India on the map. And I think that gets lost sometimes. But if you, at least being in this part of the world and my interactions with various artists, not only from India, but all over the world, and the way many of them who would like to collaborate with him, or many of them who have actually been in awe of the kind of music that he creates. That is something that just doesn't happen. That happens, over time. That happens when you've really built kind of a mecca, I should say, not
Mm.
use the word loosely, but a lighthouse for people to want to come and collaborate with you, and bridging that gap between India and the West. He's done it so beautifully. Not a lot of people have been able to do that. And I've been kind of an observer, like a fly on the wall, and seen that happen in many ways. And I think that's really special. So, I mean, I've been with other legendary artists and also producers like Quincy Jones and others, and the way they connect with AR, Herbie Hancock, Stevie Wonder, all these people who are icons. And I don't think many of them know any other artists from our country besides him.
Mm,
Maybe Ravi Shankar, but you know, because the Beatles, spent time with him and
mm,
his work. But unless they have had a reason to want to know, I mean, but if you ask them about, you know, any of them about some Indian fabric, they would know because that intrigues them.
mm.
AR intrigues them. AR challenges them. He does, musically, the way he writes. I mean, it sounds simple, but if you're a musician and you go and start transcribing what he did
Mm.
as a stupid geek, musical geek, then you understand the influence of his music. And, some of it is very simple and you're like, why did you write that? But then, how the public reacts to it is a whole different thing.
Agree.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on, but, I feel fortunate to have had just some super time, on this journey.
And more to come.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I look forward to the future. But
Amazing.
I never take it for granted.
Yeah.
Um,
And probably that leaves us with probably a message for AR sir via this podcast.
Oh, I think a message for AR is it's very difficult. I think one thing um, I think he he could do is to continue to write because and write more and more because the world needs it more, especially his music brings peace. His music brings a lot of harmony. His music makes people think. And I think he should continue to do that much more as time permits him, because I think the world needs it even more now.
True. Amazing. Mr. Clint?
Well,
Yeah, sorry, keep going.
no, no, I said thank you for
Yeah.
for taking
Yeah,
the
it's been
time.
so phenomenal to have you on this podcast and super, super articulate and the deep dive on some of those topics. I loved it. And I'm sure I want to have another podcast with you very soon. But thank you so much for making time for this. I really, really appreciate it.
I hope I was I was not prepared. I don't know what I said, but hopefully, it was helpful to whoever listens to it, if anybody listens to it. But I hope it was helpful, and it's understanding somebody that I've had the privilege to spend a little time with, in my life, in my journey, and I'll cherish those moments forever.
For sure. And I will cherish this podcast with you. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you, Chandra. Thank you for all the good work that you do that nobody gives you credit for sometimes. I know it takes a lot, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind what you're doing, and the love and appreciation you have for AR. And, you know, I think the fans benefit tremendously from that. It's easy to be in the limelight and be all glory, glory on the stage and stuff, but to do the work you're doing takes a lot of, perseverance. I know you've chased me down among others, but
Sorry.
that's actually that's you should take that as a compliment, because John McLaughlin, I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
He called me the nicest pest because I would I I was, you know, would chase him down, that's what I've been known to do. Hustling is 50% of this music industry. The other 50 is your creative stuff. You have to have that anyway. You have to have that X factor.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to hustle, you're just going to be like a Gucci dress sitting in the closet. It's all nice to play great music and all, but if
Mm.
you can't get your music out there, who cares?
True.
So I would just be a nice pest. And I took that as a compliment. You
Mm.
know, you got to chase for what you
Agree.
want.
I'm going to remember this phrase. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I will let you enjoy your evening. Thank you so much once again for giving me your time, and I really, really value this. And then I can't wait to put this out, and then the fans are going to benefit so much out of this. And I personally feel that I have gained so much knowledge in this podcast, and I'm just thankful for the friendship. Thank you so much once again.
Yeah, and I think also I want to be respectful to AR and not share stuff that, is very personal.
Agree.
So, I think I'm just sharing stuff that
Yeah.
most people know anyway, but some little tidbits that
Yeah.
were good memories to me.
Yeah. Of course, and that's the way it has to be. Yeah, and that's the best part about it. Thank you so much, Clint.
Take
And
care.